The moment Sophia Chen realized her life was about to explode, she was holding a tray of champagne flutes worth more than her monthly rent, standing in the private dining room of Luciano's, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, while a man in a $10,000 suit insulted her in rapid Sicilian, assuming the Asian waitress serving his table couldn't possibly understand a word. He was wrong. Dante Rossi, heir to the Rossi crime family, sat back in his leather chair with that particular brand of arrogance that came from never being told no. His dark eyes swept over Sophia with dismissive contempt as he turned to his associates and said in the thick Palermo dialect, "Talia sta femmina. Pensa sia e meglio di nuotri perci porta piatti? I nenti, menu di nenti." Look at this woman. She thinks she's better than us because she carries plates? She's nothing, less than nothing. His companions laughed. The sound echoed in the gilded room like the crack of a whip. And Sophia, PhD candidate in Romance linguistics, who'd spent 3 years in Sicily researching dialectical variations, who spoke 6 languages fluently and understood 12 more, made a choice. She could stay silent, stay invisible, collect her tip, and walk away like she'd done 1,000 times before when wealthy men spoke about her like she was furniture. Or she could use the one weapon they'd never see coming, their own language, spoken with such precision and cultural knowledge that it would expose exactly who was actually Nenti in this room. Sophia set down the tray with deliberate care. She straightened her shoulders, looked Dante Rossi directly in the eye, and spoke 5 words in flawless Sicilian that would change both their lives forever. Capisci tutto ciò che dici, stronzo. I understand everything you're saying, asshole. Let me take you back to where this really started. Not in that dining room, but in a cramped studio apartment in Queens, where a 29-year-old woman was learning that brilliance without opportunity was just expensive frustration. Sophia Chen had always been too much. Too smart for her working-class neighborhood in Flushing. Too ambitious for a family that valued practical careers over impractical passions. Too stubborn to give up on a PhD that was bleeding her dry financially while offering nothing concrete in return. "You're still in school?" her mother asked every Sunday during obligatory family dinners, her Mandarin sharp with disappointment. "Your cousin Jessica is a pharmacist. She has a house. When will you have a real job?" "Research is a real job, Ma. Research doesn't pay bills. Research doesn't give me grandchildren." Her mother's eyes would narrow. "You're 29, Sophia. When do you stop playing student and start being an adult?" The answer Sophia never said aloud: "When someone actually hires me for the expertise I've spent a decade building." But academic positions were scarce. Adjunct teaching paid poverty wages. And her dissertation on Sicilian dialectical preservation in diaspora communities, while academically brilliant, had 0 commercial application. So Sophia worked nights at Luciano's, serving Italian cuisine to people who wouldn't know authentic Sicilian food if it danced on their plates, wearing a uniform that cost more to dry clean than she made in tips some nights, being invisible to wealthy diners who saw her Asian face and assumed she was interchangeable with every other server. Here's what those diners never understood: invisible women hear everything. Sophia knew which hedge fund manager was embezzling from his firm because she'd served him during a confession to his lawyer. She knew which socialite was having an affair because she'd witnessed the clandestine meetings in the private rooms. She knew the restaurant's owner was connected to organized crime because she understood the Sicilian conversations happening in those closed-door dinners. Conversations in the Palermo dialect. Not tourist Italian. Not even standard Sicilian. The real language, the one that connected Old World power to New World empires. The language Sophia had spent 3 years in Sicily learning because her dissertation required primary source immersion in communities that didn't trust outsiders, especially not Chinese American women from Queens. "You want to study our dialect?" the old woman in Mondello had asked, her face weathered by Mediterranean sun and generational suspicion. "Why?" "Because languages die when people forget them," Sophia had answered in careful Sicilian. "Because your words carry history that deserves to be preserved. Because I want to understand, not exploit." It had taken 6 months for that village to trust her. Another year for them to teach her the real dialect, the one used in homes and markets, the one that carried centuries of resistance, survival, and coded communication. By the time Sophia left Sicily, she didn't just speak the dialect. She understood it, the cultural context, the social hierarchies, the way certain phrases carried meanings that couldn't be translated literally. Back in New York, that knowledge was worth exactly nothing on the job market. But it was worth everything the night Dante Rossi walked into Luciano's private dining room and assumed she was just another invisible waitress. The moment Sophia spoke, the room went dead silent. Dante's face drained of color. His associates froze mid-laugh. Even the bodyguards by the door shifted position, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Because in that world, being understood when you thought you were speaking in code was the most dangerous thing that could happen. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs, adrenaline flooding her system, every survival instinct screaming that she'd just made a catastrophic mistake. But she held Dante Rossi's gaze without flinching. "You speak Sicilian," he said flatly, switching to English. His voice was cold, controlled, the tone of a man recalculating everything. "I speak Palermitano," Sophia corrected, using the specific term for the Palermo dialect. The real version, not the cleaned-up Italian you probably learned from your grandmother before she stopped teaching you. One of his associates made a sound like a strangled laugh, quickly silenced by Dante's raised hand. "Where did you learn it?" Dante demanded. "Mondello. 3 years doing linguistic fieldwork for my dissertation on dialectical preservation in diaspora communities." Sophia kept her voice steady despite her racing pulse. Turns out, old Sicilian women love teaching their language to someone who actually respects it. Dante stood slowly. He was tall, over 6 feet, and when he moved, it was with the controlled grace of a predator. "You're a student." PhD candidate. Columbia University. Romance linguistics. Sophia lifted her chin. "I also speak Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Romanian, and enough Neapolitan to know when someone from Naples is pretending to be from Palermo." The insult hung in the air. One of Dante's associates was from Naples. Sophia had heard his accent slip earlier. Dante's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something that acknowledged the hit. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sophia Chen." "Sophia Chen," he repeated, as if testing how the Chinese surname fit with the Sicilian fluency. "You just insulted me in my native dialect in front of my associates. You understand that requires a response." Her mouth went dry. "I was responding to your insult." "You called me nothing." "I did." His dark eyes were unreadable. "I was wrong." The admission shocked everyone in the room, Sophia most of all. Dante pulled out his phone, typed something rapidly, then looked back at her. "You said you're working on a dissertation. What's your timeline?" "I'm supposed to defend next spring, but," Sophia stopped, uncertain where this was going. "But you can't afford to finish," Dante finished for her. "You're working here to pay rent while your academic funding runs out. Your research is brilliant but unmarketable. And you're watching your expertise become irrelevant because the academic system chews up people like you and spits them out." It was so accurate it felt like being flayed open. "How do you, because I see you, Sophia Chen." Dante moved closer, not threatening but intense. "Everyone else in this restaurant looks through you like your furniture. But I see someone who speaks a dying language fluently, who understands cultural context well enough to weaponize it, who has expertise that's actually valuable if applied correctly." He extended a business card. "My family's organization needs a cultural consultant. Someone who understands old-world Sicilian business practices, who can translate not just words but intent, who can navigate spaces where language is power." Sophia stared at the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Dante Rossi, Executive Consultant, Rossi Holdings. "You want to hire me to help your crime family." I want to hire you to help my legitimate business interests navigate Italian partnerships where cultural misunderstanding costs millions. His tone was pointed. Everything we do now is legal, Sophia. We're not our grandfathers. We're businessmen who need expertise. And if I say no? Then you go back to serving champagne to people who don't see you until your funding runs out and your dissertation dies unfinished. He paused. Or you take a chance on someone who actually recognizes your value. The offer was insane. Working for the Rossi family, even their legitimate holdings, was professional suicide if anyone in academia found out. But Sophia thought about her dwindling bank account. Her mother's disappointed sighs. The adjunct teaching positions that paid $3,000 per course. The academic job market that had sent her 47 rejection letters in 2 years. The crushing, suffocating invisibility of being brilliant in a world that didn't care. How much? She asked. Dante's smile was sharp. Enough to finish your degree comfortably and still have money left over. Plus, access to private archives in Sicily that would make your dissertation the definitive work on dialectical preservation. That's bribery. That's compensation for rare expertise. He tilted his head. What's it going to be, Sophia? Stay invisible, or let someone finally see what you're capable of? She thought about the old women in Mondello who'd taught her their language, who'd trusted her with their words. She thought about her dissertation, gathering digital dust while she served overpriced pasta to people who couldn't pronounce caponata. She thought about being 29, brilliant, and invisible. I want creative control over my research, Sophia said. I want guaranteed access to those archives. And I want it in writing that nothing I do compromises academic integrity. Done. I also want an apology. In Sicilian. For calling me nothing. Dante's eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect or might have been something more dangerous. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and cedar-sharp, and spoke in the formal Palermo dialect. Mi dispiace, Sophia Chen. Fui una gran testa di minchia. Tu si bedra intelligenti, e meritasti rispetto. I'm sorry, Sophia Chen. I was a grand dickhead. You are beautiful and intelligent, and you deserved respect. His associates looked stunned. Dante Rossi didn't apologize. Ever. Accepted, Sophia said quietly. Then we have a deal. He extended his hand. Sophia looked at it, broad, calloused despite the expensive manicure, the hand of someone who'd built an empire through will and violence before pivoting to legitimacy. She could walk away. Stay safe. Stay invisible. Or she could shake the devil's hand and finally be seen. She took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, electric. Welcome to the family business, Dr. Chen, Dante said. I'm not a doctor yet. You will be. It wasn't encouragement. It was a command. I don't hire people who fail. The offices of Rossi Holdings occupied 3 floors of a Tribeca high-rise that screamed money so old it didn't need to shout. Sophia arrived at 9 a.m. the following Monday wearing her only professional outfit, a gray suit from H&M that had seen better days, and carrying her worn leather messenger bag stuffed with research notes. The receptionist, an elegant woman in her 50s, looked her up and down with barely concealed assessment. You're the new cultural consultant. Sophia Chen. Mr. Rossi is expecting you. 32nd floor. The woman's expression was unreadable. Word of advice, don't mistake his interest for kindness. He's still a Rossi. Sophia didn't know what that meant until the elevator doors opened directly into Dante's office. It was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson, furniture that belonged in museums, and walls lined with books in multiple languages. Italian literature, Sicilian history, American business strategy. The space was Dante Rossi in architectural form, cultured violence. You're punctual, Dante said from behind a mahogany desk. He was in shirt sleeves, his jacket discarded, looking both more casual and somehow more dangerous without the armor of a full suit. "You're paying me too much to be late." "Not yet, I'm not. First, you prove your value." He gestured to a leather chair. "Sit." Sophia sat, hyper-aware of how out of place she looked in this world of wealth and power. Dante pulled up something on his laptop, turned it toward her. "This is a contract negotiation. Italian partners, old Sicilian families transitioning to legitimate business. They're asking for terms that seem reasonable on paper." Sophia scanned the document. Standard business language, nothing unusual, then she saw it. Buried in the Italian text, a phrase that looked innocuous in translation but carried specific meaning in Sicilian business culture. "La famiglia è prima di tutto." Family comes first. In English, it sounded like corporate team-building nonsense. In Sicilian business context, it was a power play, a demand for loyalty structures that superseded contractual obligations. "They're not negotiating a partnership," Sophia said slowly. "They're trying to establish hierarchy. This phrase, in this context, means they expect your organization to defer to theirs on major decisions. They're testing whether you understand old-world power dynamics." Dante leaned back, his expression unreadable. "How do I counter without insulting them?" Sophia thought fast, drawing on 3 years of cultural immersion. "You respond with "Il rispetto è reciproco." Respect is reciprocal. It acknowledges the cultural framework they're using while establishing equality. Then you invite them to New York for face-to-face negotiations, showing you're not afraid to have them in your territory. And if they refuse? Then they were never serious about legitimate business. They're fishing for weakness. Sophia met his eyes. Old Sicilian business culture is all about respect and territory. You have to demonstrate both. Dante studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, genuine, surprised, pleased. "You just saved me from walking into a trap that would have cost millions in credibility. On your first day. Is that good? That's exactly why I hired you." He closed the laptop. "You don't just speak the language, Sophia. You understand the culture. That's rare. Valuable." Something shifted in the room. The dynamic changing from employer-employee to something more complicated. "I have another problem," Dante said, his tone shifting to something more personal. "My grandmother is dying. She's 93, still sharp as a knife, and she refuses to speak to me in anything but Palermitano. Says I've forgotten my roots, become too American." His jaw tightened with vulnerability Sophia hadn't expected from a man like him. "She's right. I lost the language when I was 17, decided I didn't need it. Thought English and business acumen were enough." He looked out the windows at Manhattan spread below like a kingdom. "Now she's dying, and I can't tell her I'm sorry in the language that matters to her." Sophia's chest ached. "You want me to teach you? I want you to help me reconnect with something I threw away because I thought it made me weak." Dante looked back at her. "Can you do that?" "Yes," Sophia said quietly. "But it won't be easy. You'll have to be vulnerable, make mistakes, sound stupid while you relearn things you should have never forgotten." "I'm paying you to make me uncomfortable?" "You're paying me to teach you your own heritage. That requires humility." For the first time since she'd met him, Dante Rossi looked uncertain. "I don't do humility well." "Then you'll learn." Sophia opened her messenger bag, pulled out a worn notebook. "We start with the basics. Greetings, common phrases. You practice with me daily, 30 minutes minimum. And when you're ready, you speak to your grandmother. And if I fail? You won't. Because I don't work with people who quit." Dante's laugh was surprised, genuine. "You just threw my words back at me. I'm a quick study." "I'm starting to understand that." What neither of them said aloud, this was no longer just a business arrangement. This was something more personal, more dangerous, more inevitable. The next 6 weeks transformed Sophia's life in ways she couldn't have predicted. She split her time between consulting on Rossi Holdings' international negotiations and teaching Dante his grandmother's dialect. The work was intense, challenging, and more fulfilling than anything she'd done in academia. Because here, her expertise mattered. When she explained why certain Italian phrases carried coded meanings, executives listened. When she advised on cultural protocols for Sicilian partners, Dante implemented her suggestions without question. When she corrected his Sicilian pronunciation with patience and precision, he worked harder than any student she'd ever had. "You're a brutal teacher," Dante said one afternoon after she'd made him repeat the same phrase 15 times. "You're a terrible student who thinks he can charm his way through conjugations." "Is it working?" "Not remotely." But Sophia smiled despite herself. They were in his office, the Manhattan skyline golden with late afternoon sun. Dante sat across from her at a small table they'd started using for lessons, looking less like a crime boss and more like an exhausted student. Again, Sophia said. "Nana, mi dispiace pie to deciducie Percy." "Grandma, I'm sorry for everything I lost." Dante repeated it, his accent better but still carrying too much American influence. "Your R's are too hard. Sicilian R's are softer, almost French." "Like this," Sophia demonstrated. He tried again. "Closer. Better. Now add emotion. You're not reciting vocabulary. You're apologizing to someone you love." Dante's expression shuddered. "Sophia, say it like you mean it, Dante. Or don't say it at all." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke, and this time his voice cracked with genuine emotion. "Nana, mi dispiace pie to deciducie Percy." The words hung between them, raw and honest. "Perfect," Sophia whispered. "That's perfect." Dante's hand covered hers on the table. The touch was electric, unexpected, crossing every professional boundary they'd carefully maintained. "You make me want to be better," he said quietly. "Not just at Sicilian. At everything." Sophia's breath caught. She should pull away. Maintain distance. Remember that he was still a Rossi, still dangerous, still someone whose world operated by rules that had nothing to do with hers. But his hand was warm, and his eyes held something she'd never seen in them before: vulnerability, hope, the tentative beginning of trust. "Dante," his phone buzzed. He pulled away, checked it, and his expression went cold. "I have to go. Family emergency." He stood, grabbed his jacket. "Sophia, I need you to come with me." "What? Why?" "Because my grandmother just asked to meet the woman who's teaching me to speak like a Sicilian again." His eyes met hers, intense and unreadable. "And in my family, when Nana asks to meet someone, it means something significant." Sophia's heart raced. "What does it mean?" "It means she thinks you might be important." Dante extended his hand. "Are you coming?" It was a test. An invitation. A doorway into a world that would change everything. Sophia took his hand. "Let's go meet your grandmother." Dante's grandmother lived in a brownstone in Bensonhurst that looked like it had been transported directly from Palermo. The neighborhood was old Italian, the kind where Sicilian was still spoken on stoops and family hierarchies determined everything. The Rossi name carried weight here. People nodded respectfully as Dante walked past, their eyes curious as they noticed Sophia at his side. "They're wondering who you are," Dante said quietly. "Chinese woman with me in this neighborhood, it's unusual." "Should I be worried?" "Only if you can't handle their curiosity." His hand settled on her lower back, protective and possessive. "Stay close." The brownstone's interior was a shrine to Sicilian heritage. Religious icons, family photos spanning decades, furniture that had probably been shipped from Italy. The air smelled of tomato sauce and old wood, and generations of life lived in these rooms. A woman in her 60s appeared, Dante's aunt, Sophia guessed, and her eyes went wide when she saw them together. She said something rapid in Sicilian, too fast for Sophia to catch. Dante responded in the dialect Sophia had taught him, stilted but earnest. His aunt's expression softened. "She's in the back room," the aunt said in English, looking at Sophia. "She's been asking about you all day." "What did you tell her?" Dante asked. "That you finally found someone who doesn't let you get away with anything." His aunt smiled. "She's excited." The back room was dim, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. An ancient woman sat in a wheelchair by the window, her face weathered by 93 years of life, her eyes sharp with intelligence that age hadn't diminished. "Nana," Dante said softly, kneeling beside her wheelchair. "Ci l'aeroportai." "I brought her." The old woman's gaze moved to Sophia, assessing, measuring, seeing everything in the way that grandmothers always do. Then she spoke in pure Palermitano, her voice reedy but clear. "Tu si chita si stain signanuum inaputa como para como un Siciliano?" "You're the one teaching my grandson how to speak like a Sicilian?" Sophia knelt beside Dante, meeting the grandmother's eyes with respect. "Si, signora. Sta facendo bonu. Havi cori." "Yes, ma'am. He's doing well. He has heart." The old woman's eyes crinkled with delight. She reached out, her hand trembling, and touched Sophia's face with surprising gentleness. "Peri meglu diidu. Unimperasti? You speak better than him. Where did you learn?" "Mundalidu. Tri anni cu elatri. Minsigneru perci vulium parabonu. Mondello. 3 years with the old women. They taught me because I wanted to learn properly." The grandmother laughed, a sound like rustling paper, joyful despite the frailty. "Sinisai e Siciliana. Miraculu. Chinese and Sicilian. A miracle." She looked at Dante, then back at Sophia, and said something that made Dante's breath catch. "Ida e ta remi. Nana la sarigiri. She is your queen. Don't let her go." Sophia's face burned. Dante's hand found hers, squeezed gently. "Non you fazu, Nana. Permittu." "I won't, Grandma. I promise." The moment stretched between them, grandmother, grandson, and the woman who'd somehow bridged a gap neither Dante nor his Nana thought could be crossed. The old woman spoke again, this time switching to English for Sophia's sake. "You teach him good. Make him remember who he is." Her eyes were fierce. "Dante, he forget for a long time. Think American enough. But no. We are Sicilian first. Always." "I understand," Sophia said quietly. "You bring him back. You important." The grandmother's grip on Sophia's hand tightened with surprising strength. "You stay. Family need good woman. He need good woman. You stay, yes?" It wasn't a question. It was a command wrapped in hope, wrapped in the desperate wish of a dying matriarch who wanted to see her grandson settled before she passed. Sophia looked at Dante. His expression was unguarded, vulnerable, silently asking the same question his grandmother had voiced. "I'll stay," Sophia heard herself say. The old woman smiled, satisfied. She released Sophia's hand, settled back in her wheelchair, and closed her eyes like that single promise had given her permission to rest. Dante's aunt returned, gestured that it was time to let Nana sleep. Outside, standing on the brownstone stoop in the golden Brooklyn afternoon, Sophia realized what she'd just done. "I promised your dying grandmother I'd stay with you," she said, slightly hysterical. "We've known each other 6 weeks. 7 weeks tomorrow," Dante corrected. His expression was serious. "Sophia, you don't have to, your grandmother thinks I'm important to you." "You are." "Why?" Dante moved closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head to meet his eyes. "Because you see me. Not the name, not the reputation, not the money. Just me, the man who lost his language and his grandmother's respect. The man trying to be better than his father was. His hand came up, cupped her cheek. You make me want to deserve you. Sophia's heart hammered. I'm not some prize to be won, Dante. I know. You're brilliant, stubborn, and way too good for me. He smiled, soft and genuine. But I'm selfish enough to want you anyway. This is insane. Completely. I'm an academic. Your reformed criminal legacy trying to build something legitimate? Dante's thumb traced her cheekbone. I know who I am, Sophia. And I know what you are, the most dangerous woman I've ever met because you armed yourself with language and culture instead of violence. Is that supposed to be romantic? Is it working? Despite everything, the insanity, the risk, the absolute chaos of falling for a man from a world she'd only studied academically, Sophia laughed. Yes, you terrible man. It's working. Dante kissed her there on his grandmother's stoop in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, with neighbors watching and judging and the setting sun painting everything gold. And Sophia kissed him back, tasting possibility and danger and the beginning of something that would either save them both or destroy them trying. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. Finish your dissertation, he said quietly. Defend it brilliantly. Become Dr. Sophia Chen. And then what? Then let me spend the rest of my life proving I deserve you. That's a long time. I'm patient. You're really not. For you, I'll learn. Epilogue. 8 months later, Sophia defended her dissertation on a cold March morning in Columbia's Italian department. Her committee asked hard questions. She answered with precision, authority, and the confidence of someone who'd spent years living inside her research. When the deliberation ended, when her committee chair smiled and said, "Congratulations, Dr. Chen," Sophia felt something break open in her chest, relief, pride, validation for every sacrifice she'd made. Outside the building, Dante waited. He'd taken the day off, worn a suit, brought flowers like a proud parent. How does it feel? He asked as she emerged victorious. Like I finally earned the right to be seen. You always had that right, Sophia. The world just took too long to pay attention. He pulled her close. But I'm paying attention now. For the rest of our lives, I'm paying attention. She looked up at him, this complicated, dangerous, reformed man who'd seen her brilliance when everyone else saw an invisible waitress. I love you, she said. In Sicilian. Tamu. His smile was like sunrise. Tamu puru, Circe May. I love you too, my queen. They kissed there on the Columbia campus, the PhD and the crime family Heir, speaking a dying language to each other in the heart of New York City. And somewhere in Bensonhurst, Dante's grandmother smiled in her sleep, satisfied that her grandson had finally found his way home, through language, through love, through a brilliant woman who refused to stay invisible. Because here's what they never tell you about being underestimated, it gives you space to become dangerous in ways no one expects. Sophia Chen had walked into that restaurant as invisible furniture. She'd walked out as someone's queen. And the only weapons she'd needed were her voice, her expertise, and the radical refusal to accept that brilliance without privilege meant nothing. Sometimes, the most revolutionary act is simply speaking truth in a language they assumed you'd never understand.